Today just happens to be World Marriage Day. Go figure. I was like, how cool is that? You know, we're talking about marriage, love and marriage this month. On the same day, it also has to be Satisfied Staying Single Day too, so. Right? So I guess we can celebrate both. So if you're married or single, okay, this fits for you. And if you are single today, this message, you are going to get a lot out of this one. This is a great one. And if you're married, it's going to take you back. It's going to take you back to that wedding day. But before I get too far in, love songs are awesome. I love a good love song. And again, Ryan and Cassie, thanks for learning that and singing that today. In 1961, Elvis Presley, he came out with a love song. It was Can't Help Falling in Love with You. You know that one? Yeah. A couple years later, the Righteous Brothers responded and said, "You've lost that love and feeling." Captain and Tennille, anybody remember those guys? 1975. Love will keep us together. But then the Bee Gees asked, "How deep is your love?" Right? They asked that question. Foreigner in the 80s, let's go the 80s, they exclaimed, "I want to know what love is." And Tina Turner responded that same year and said, "What's love got to do with it?" Right? And Whitney Houston a few years later said, "I will always love you, and I." Oh, I'm so thankful you clapped. I could just hear the tech people going, all of a sudden everybody just went offline online here. I don't know what happened. Beyonce and Jay-Z in 2003 admitted to being crazy in love. And Justin Bieber in 2016 decided it would be easier to just love yourself, right? Yep. Well, depending on who you ask and who you listen to, who influences your life, your upbringing, there's a lot of ideas on love. What it is, what it means to be in love, how to even respond to those feelings, right? The world gives us all kinds of ideas. Actually, I sometimes feel inundated, overwhelmed by the world's perspective on what love is. With so many things fighting for our time and our emotions and our energy, it's not surprising that so many relationships and marriages, they fail. Some even end up in divorce. Today, I have just 2 points to the message. And I want to talk about marriage and how to stay together. But before I do that, I think we need to talk about divorce. And you did so well last week when I talked about marriage being between one man and one woman. I so appreciated just the holiness of the moment, the sacredness. I couldn't even tell who was on what side of the conversation. You all were just locked in and engaged. Today, I'm talking about another touchy subject, and that is divorce. And the Bible has plenty to say about divorce, but if I can encourage you before you tune me out online or walk out of the room, if you have been impacted by a divorce, my heart goes out to you. Divorce impacts so many people. And I want to remind you today, okay, what has happened in your past is your past, okay? And the devil, the way he works is he wants to continue to cultivate any type of guilt, any type of condemnation for maybe what you did or said in that relationship. And he wants you to bring that with you into all your future relationships. He wants to beat you down thinking that what's happened in the past is your destiny for the future. But let me tell you this, child of God, God's got awesome plans for you. And every time the devil rears his ugly head to remind you of your past, man, just poke him in the eye, okay? And you remind him of the future God has for you, okay? So do that. Hang on to that. So a couple years ago, I preached a message that was received really well by the congregation, by those of you who heard it. And I talked about marriage, and I commented that the couple who prays together, plays together, lays together, stays together. And remember I talked about spooning And several of you got online and just ran with that. I was like, okay, you can say it there. I'm not going to repeat it, but it was funny. It was funny. I still believe that today. I still believe that the couple that prays together, plays together, and lays together stays together. I'm not going to preach that message, but I still believe that. And as we discuss love and marriage this month, today I want to answer the question, how do I stay married? So let's talk about divorce real quick. And I've got tons of notes. Wasn't able to fit it all in last service. I'm not going to try to cram it in today. We'll see how far we go, and we'll bring the rest into next week's message, which is actually on intimacy in the marriage. So if today's not PG-13, I guarantee you next week will be, okay? So let's talk about divorce. You know, statistics float around, but they seem to hover right around 53% of all marriages end in divorce. And there is an ugly, untrue statistic about Christians that actually matches that statistic. Anytime you get a statistic, make sure you don't hang your hat on it. A statistic is something you see, you investigate, and then you walk on. So I investigated, and I think Pastor Nathan, because he was like, hey, I got some information I want to send your way. Focus on the Family, a long-time marriage and family organization. They did a study on marriages that dissolved where the people claimed to be Christian. And what they found in the churches is that just under 30% of people who claim to be Christian have been involved in a divorce. Now that's less than 53%, right? 30%. So Focus on the Family said, we want to know, what do they mean by being a Christian? And what they found was real simple. It's what we preach all the time. It fits right in line with your discipleship process. And that is this: people who attend church, who pray outside of church, even if it's just for your meals as a family, people who pick up a devotional or a Bible at some point in the week, people who give in an offering, those people are less likely to get divorced. And here's what they said. Here's the reason why. They said because those folks continually put themselves in a position or in a space like we're in right now to hear the truth of the gospel, to take a moment to worship. They give, and therefore they constantly are evaluating their life. Therefore, when it comes to marriage, they talk less about divorce. They focus more on what makes us happy. They focus more on how to build one another up. I'm like, man, that's another reason to go to church, folks. Okay, I want that. And I would love to see less and less people be overwhelmed with the struggles in their marriages that lead to divorce. In Matthew chapter 19, verses 3-6, Jesus made a statement about marriage. And this is actually even winking back to last week. Here's what it says in Matthew 19, verses 3-6. Some Pharisees came to him to do what? Test him. The Pharisees came to test Jesus. And they asked, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? And Jesus says, haven't you read that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Amen. Marriage is God's design. One man and one woman together forever. Saw my first advertisement this week on, I don't remember what we were watching, for a reality TV show about thruples. And I'm like, here it is. Now we're off to the next thing. It's not bad enough. We can see a bachelor on TV making out with a bunch of women, deciding which one he's going to marry for the rest of his life. Now, we have to navigate the channels on how many people can be in your marriage relationship now. And is it cool to have more than one woman or one guy in your relationship? And I mean, the world is going to give you the wrong answer every time, folks. Every single time. That's why we need to have the truth of the Word of God. Marriage is God's design. It is permanent. Divorce is not God's design. I had someone ask me one time as they were going through divorce that if divorce isn't God's design, then why is it in the Bible? I'm like, okay, I get that. I understand that. And the answer to that, if you were to continue reading in Matthew 19 there, Jesus says in verse 8 that divorce was given because the human heart was hard. That's why divorce is in the Bible. Jesus was asked the question, and therefore he answers the question. There's a joke, I'll let you know right up front, it's just a joke. Marriage they don't always turn out like we want them, I know that, but there was a woman who said, I was looking for the ideal, it became a big deal, and now I want a new deal, okay? And as humorous as that might be, and though I can say that statement in about 5 seconds, there are people who are living that in their life. They looked for the ideal, and it became a big deal, bigger than what they anticipated. And now, man, all they can think about is getting a new deal. There's a book, guys, you can put that up there. It's by Craig and his wife, Amy Groeschel, and it's From This Day Forward, which is part of Vows, right? From This Day Forward. And the book, it's 5 commitments to fail-proof your marriage, which I like that. Would love to fail-proof my marriage. And these are the 5. Seek God, fight fair, have fun, stay pure, and never give up. Those are good, aren't they? Craig and his wife, they were great authors, great pastors. I highly recommend the book. I'll give you a quote from the book. Here's what Craig said. He said, getting divorced because you ran out of love is like selling your car because you ran out of gas. What do you do when the gas gets low in your vehicle? You fill it up. It works the same way with love and marriage. And I've talked to plenty of people who have said, we just fell out of love. But, I mean, as if to say that's okay. Like I expected this. I expected to get married to the person I said I loved, knowing that one day we would fall out of love. Marriage takes work. And the best marriages are the ones with the most love. I was with my sisters yesterday and told them I was talking about this, and I said, hey, how have you guys stayed married so long? They just quickly, it was like both of them almost instantly said, lots of forgiveness and lots of mercy. Lots of grace. They said lots of forgiveness and lots of grace. Asking it and giving it. It's what it takes. It takes a lot of that. I think it's important to make this very clear that marriage is not 50-50. Divorce is 50-50. Splitting it down the middle and who gets what. Marriage is, it's 100 and 100. It's both people giving everything to the marriage, giving everything you've got. I think it's important to remember this as well, that there are no perfect marriages, no perfect husbands, and no perfect wives. But if you keep believing in one another, there will be plenty of perfect moments in your marriage. Don't stop. Keep pushing forward. And if you're struggling with your spouse, if you're in fear that your marriage is on the brink of destruction, if you feel like you've fallen out of love, I encourage you, phone a friend. You maybe have had the conversation 100 times with your spouse, and you feel like you're talking to the wall. I mean, we've been there. I've been married 33 years this year, Rhonda, you and me. That's awesome. I love you. You're awesome. If you ever speak, if you ever mention how long you've been married, people just naturally clap. So it's just as a tip. I didn't do it for that, but I was just thinking, we've been married for a while, you know, and it takes work. And sometimes she probably feels like, Rob, are you there? Because it's like I'm talking to the wall. Hello. She's probably felt like, yes, no? You're just not going to say nothing. Okay, all right. But if you talked it out and you feel like we aren't getting anywhere, phone a friend, man. Connect with a pastor so we can be that third person in the room to help navigate the conversation with you. Or, man, call a counselor. And I will have so many people who I've talked to tell me, but counseling is so expensive. You know what? $120 an hour is a lot cheaper than the divorce you may end up going through. You will lose more than $125 if the issue does not get resolved. Rhonda and I, one time, we were just in a funk. We were at a spot. We had talked about a situation multiple times. And we were like, I think it was more me. I was like, I think we just need to go see a counselor. We just need to go see somebody, that third person. And we were there, and within that hour we together, the guy, he just asked the right questions. And man, when we left, we were like, okay, we got an answer. I didn't like it 100%. She didn't like it 100%, but we were willing to move forward working at it as we agreed upon. And we're still married. So, and that issue is, well, you're gonna face troubles in your marriage. You need someone sometimes to walk with you through it, through the muck, through the issues. God didn't intend you to do it alone. Even though you've got your partner, you know what? A 3-cord strand is not easily broken, right? That's what we read in Ecclesiastes. Sometimes you need a third person in there to help rebraid what God has brought together, to walk with you onto the other side. You know, there's a danger. Let me interject this. If I was to say to Rhonda, hey, I think we need some counseling, and Rhonda was to tell me, I don't think we do, or to say, I'm not going to a counselor, I could read that as she doesn't see me as valuable enough to actually work on our marriage, or that the issue, she doesn't care about how it affects me and impacts me. So if you're a person that says, I'm not gonna go talk to somebody, be careful that you're not the dangerous one in the relationship. And be careful about what you're saying to your spouse. I think at some point, we all need somebody. We all need someone from the outside to help our focus get set and get right. On the other side of difficult, Craig Rochelle says this in his book too. He says, on the other side of difficult, we often find what is best. We often find what we're looking for. The difficulty, it may be hard, it may be tough, we maybe have talked about it 1,000 times, but man, if we'll continue to move forward, we'll tackle the tough issue, what we want is waiting on the other side. So that's what I have to say about divorce today. So let's talk about marriage. How do you stay married? Well, Forbes last year surveyed 1,000 people who went through a divorce. So last year, Forbes took 1,000 people and they interviewed them, and they asked the question, could your marriage have been saved? And if so, what would it have been? 63% of them, 630 of them, said our marriage could have been saved. And of course they said, so what is it? Only 5% said no, there was no way our marriage could have been saved. Only 5%. And here's what it was. They said a better understanding of the commitment of marriage prior to marrying could have saved our partnership. A better understanding of that. As your pastor, I want you to have a better understanding of what you're getting into. I want you to have a better understanding of what marriage is all about. What does God say about it? What does culture say about marriage? How do we navigate all of this? It's just too important. Many couples who decide to get married simply have unrealistic expectations. And they take those expectations into the marriage. They think that person that they're marrying is gonna be the end all be all, that they're gonna just, every relational, every emotional, every mental, every spiritual aspect of life is gonna be fulfilled by this person. Impossible. Cannot happen. There is nobody who can fill all of that for you. All right? It's an unrealistic expectation, but many people think that. If you're not married and hoping to get married, what I'm about to share, you're gonna wanna hold on to. And if you are married, what I'm going to share about wedding vows, I hope it takes you back to your wedding day. Don't be like the guy who said, I told my wife I loved her on our wedding day. If anything changes, I will let her know. That's not healthy. And I have heard people say that. Well, nothing's changed, so why do I need to say anything? Oh my goodness. Let's go back to those wedding vows. I want you to stay married, okay? And I want you to renew your vows. That's one way. It's one way you can stay married, is renew your vows. And I'm not talking about at your 25th wedding anniversary or your 40th anniversary. Revisit your vows. Revisit what you said on your wedding day, that commitment that you made with one another. Actually, it's a covenant that you made between the people who were there, to one another, and to God. Covenant. It's a bigger word than a contract. Contract may be something you sign. You're going to buy a house. You sign all these pages of contracts, right? And you can still get out of that house. In the Old Testament, when God introduced covenant, this would be the idea. That when two people decided on something and they were going to be in unity on something, maybe it's a business transaction. A lot of times that's what it might have been. Even in a wedding, what would happen is the two parties would take an animal and they would split it down the center and they would lay it, so it was right here, they would kill it, lay it open. And the two people, let's just say husband and wife, let's just use that, okay, because we're talking about marriage. They would walk through the two sides of that animal and that blood, walking through, passing through, saying, I am in covenant with you now. And if I should break the covenant, may I be as that animal is right now. Changes your perspective on the vows, right? The commitment was so deep. It was so spiritual and so binding that they said, until death do us part. They said, what has been joined together, let nothing or anybody separate, lest we end up like this animal. That's what they were saying. It's a vow. In a marriage, the vows represent a spoken covenant between two people. In Matthew 5, specifically verses 33 through 37, Jesus discusses oaths and promises and contracts and vows, and he explains that they all have the same goal, and that is this: to induce people to simply keep their word, especially when they're tempted not to. That's the point of an oath, of a vow, of a covenant. When you got married, you might have said your vows. You may have agreed to some vows. Sometimes I will say the vows and the couple want me to just say them so they can say I do. Other times they repeat after me. I remember when Rhonda and I got married, her grandfather, who was the pastor of my church, he married us. I remember vividly 33 years ago, standing there and him saying, Rob, we say, repeat after me. I, Rob, take you, Rhonda, to be my wedded wife. And I'm like, I, Rob, take you, Rhonda, to be my wedded husband. Yes, no, my wife. Had to be my wife. I was a mess. I don't even know what I said. I was bawling, not because I was afraid of what was happening. I wanted what was happening. But man, I was making a commitment, a forever commitment to this woman who I loved. And there was just this connection, this draw from me to her. Now, Rhonda's not as emotional as I am, but she appreciates my emotionalism. I don't know, how do you say that? Yeah, how I am emotional, how God made me. But those vows, we have worked to keep. Some people, they write out their vows, and it's so sweet. I could just take a step back, and he's pulling out, and he's fumbling over his things, and she's crying. And people are like, "Oh, it's the sweetest thing I ever heard." I'm like, "Yeah, it's better than me standing up here making you say I do." But it's just beautiful. It's beautiful to see that. So as you think back, those of you who are married, to your marriage, however your vows were, I want to dip back into those vows, those commitments, that dedication that two people made to each other and before God. Here's what I would say to a married couple in their vows. Do you, so-and-so, take so-and-so to be your wedded wife or husband, whichever it may be, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do you part, if so say I do. And they will say, I do. I'm so glad nobody has said, yes, no, no, yes, no, to each of those. But I want to unpack those phrases. I take you to be my wedded spouse. Traditional piece of the marriage, it's in there because it shows your free will. That you aren't being coaxed into this, you're not being forced into this, that you are willingly saying, I want to marry you. I take you to be my spouse. You've selected that person. And this matters to God because God isn't a matchmaker. There's not a verse in the Bible that says God created someone else specifically for you. And I think too often we try to find that one perfect person. We try to pin it all on God that he needs to show us that soulmate of ours. Think of this. If God had somebody specifically for you and you did not marry that person, you've ruined it for everybody else the rest of eternity. Think about that, right? Right? And how many people have not married, the perfect person? Here, we know what God wants from you. He wants you to love him and to honor him with your life. And he wants you to look for someone who is doing the exact same thing. The Bible talks about not being unequally yoked together with unbelievers. So a Christian should not date or marry somebody who is not a Christian. And listen, just because they say they are doesn't guarantee that they are. You will know them by their fruit. Does their life show it? Are you headed in the same direction? If you like going to church, do they like going to church? If you like praying, do they like praying? If you like reading the Bible and having a devotional time together, do they like that? Do they appreciate worship and giving and serving? If they don't, I would question, are you really a Christian? Are you really committed to God? And let me tell you, young lady, you're not going to change him. You're not going to change him. I saw it happen once. They got married and they divorced. So I've not seen it yet happen. If you have that story, you can send it to mystory@fafw.org. Just like any testimony you might have, send it there. Be the person that you want someone else looking for that person to be. You hear what I'm saying? Yeah. You follow Jesus. You look for somebody who's following Jesus, and you're going to find somebody who's looking for the same type of person you are. I said last week, don't lower those expectations. Mark chapter 10, verse 9 says, what therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. In the NIV it says, let no one split apart what God has joined together. What that's saying is this, is once you've made the commitment, you have covenanted with that person. Therefore, God says, I honor your covenant. I honor your covenant. And God's like, now don't let anything mess that up. Don't let anything take that apart. The word wedded, your wedded wife, your wedded husband means connected, attached, united, joined together, yoked together. That's a good Bible word. So the phrase, I take you to be my wedded spouse, is really saying, I choose you as my teammate to be one in mind, one in heart, one in purpose, and I freely unite myself to your life. That's what you're saying. To have and to hold from this day forward, that just sounds fun. To have, you're mine, right? That's my woman, right? Isn't that what we were saying at the table last night? That's my man, that's my woman. We were saying that. To have and to hold refers to belonging together. Genesis 2:24 says, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and he shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. They shall be joined, united, glued together, stuck together, to have and to hold. It's a marriage bond that can't be broken. To have means to enjoy the relationship, even the sexual relationship. It means to know someone in a way that nobody else gets to. Okay, you picking up what I'm laying down? It's between, you guys are like, yeah, move on, right? You know that person in a way nobody else knows them. Sexually, but also you know the details of their life. You know their hopes and dreams. You know what makes them tick. You know what ticks them off. I mean, you know all of that. You know all of that. I don't think I've ever said that in my life before, babe. I said that in the microphone. To keep, to hold, to have and to hold, to tend to watch over, to defend, to watch over that person like I guess like somebody tending a garden. Okay, you're gonna pull out the weeds, you're gonna water it. You're gonna put nutrients into the ground so that good grows. You're gonna put a fence around it so nothing else gets in. And if anything gets in, you're gonna drive that tent peg through its skull, right? Like last week, right? I need to preach on that story, man. I need to take JL and preach on that. That's awesome. But that's, you're tending to have and to hold. That's what you're doing. You have that person there. You're nourishing them. Ephesians 5:29 talks about nourishing your spouse through the word of God. There's a part of that nourishes their spiritual life. To hold might include protecting them from little things such as mice and noises and intruders, angry in-laws. If you got married, that person's your number one now. Now you're on team, whatever the last name is. You're on that team. You defend your spouse to your family. That is part of this vow that you took. You don't talk ill about your spouse to your mom or your dad or to your brothers and sisters. You don't do that. They don't need another reason why that person wasn't good enough for you, right? Defend that. There are bigger issues that we need to defend them from. Too much busyness, pornography, abuse, addiction, infidelity. To have and to hold them from those things. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. Yes, no, yes. Right? I mean, we said it, I do to these things, but do we live it out in our life? This portion of the marriage vows is a promise to stay faithful, to stay committed no matter what happens. 1 Corinthians 7:28, just a little piece of it says, those who marry will have troubles in this world. Those who marry will have troubles. But when you get married, you vow that when the troubles come, I got your back. We're on the team. I'll go in front of you when necessary. You go in front of me when necessary. You know, I'll cover you. I'll be that covering for you. That's what it is. It's like an umbrella on a rainy day. The rain hasn't stopped, but you're protected from the elements. You're protected from the rain. That's what you are. You're the umbrella for your spouse. Problem is, too many of us don't want to get wet. We don't want to protect. It's hard. It's difficult. Yeah, it is. But the blessing comes when we persevere. Life has its ups and downs. Has its good times and hard times. Traveling this journey together as a husband and wife is what grows and deepens our love for each other. Maybe you've seen this before. An older couple, one of them has is sick. It's going to be a life-ending illness. And maybe it lasts weeks or months. And man, that husband shows up every day at that bedside, helping her eat, wiping her mouth, washing her hair, singing that love song. I thank God. I don't know all the words, but that we're right next to each other, that our hand that still fits perfectly in mine, saying, God, you love me like you do. We look at that and we say, I want that marriage. I want that. That if I'm the person who's sick, they don't abandon ship. They don't leave me. They're gonna be there till the end. I'm safe now. I'm secure because I know the one I vowed to so many years ago has got me in my worst moment, in my deepest of sorrows. They're there with me. Better, worse, richer, poorer, sickness, and in health. To love and to cherish, forsaking all others, means that your love sacrifices. It sacrifices what you want. You'll give up something highly valued for the sake of someone else considered to have great value. That person is more important than things. So if they scratch your car, they're more important than that vehicle. If you break the gravy boat, you're more important. I don't know about that. Right? I'm losing some of the ladies. They're like, danger, preacher, danger. They are more important. To cherish means to recognize your spouse's incredible value as a human being and as a child of God and as the person you've chosen to spend your life with. Forsaking all others means that you are no longer shopping, that you're not going to look for an upgrade. You are saying, you are the only barbecue sauce for my ribs. That is what you're saying. And the great songwriter Justin Bieber said, the grass is greener where you water it most. So because they're the grass you own, water the grass. Tend to the garden. Cultivate that relationship. The breaking of this vow is where most divorces happen. Someone fails to love and to cherish, and they end up forsaking their vows. And finally, till death, we do part. It just means making a lifelong commitment. It means that the only thing that's going to mess this whole thing up is if one of us passes away. So that's what's going to happen. And that brings so much security to that bond. The vow was really written by God in Matthew chapter 9, and I want to go back to those verses 4 through 6. Jesus said to those Pharisees, haven't you read that at the beginning the Creator God made them male and female and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. And here it is. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. It is God's design that the only thing that breaks the marriage is a death in the marriage. Now, don't get any ideas, because murder is one of the top 10, all right? Worship team, you guys can come on out. Making these vows before God, your family and friends, and keeping them is deeply meaningful. And folks, it is worth the effort. It is worth the effort that is involved in it. Now, here's what I want you to do. This is your love and marriage challenge for this week. Okay, I like to give you these things to take with you. Those of you with social media, it was awesome seeing the pictures of your wedding day. Those of you who posted last week, all week long, I loved it. Some of you, you don't look anything like you did 30 years ago. I know, me either. People keep telling us we just keep aging well. We're like wine, we just keep getting better the older we get. Here's what I want you to do this week. Find your love song. What is it? If you've got one, you're married, you've got a love song, throw it on, surprise your spouse. Let it play, sing it together, dance together to your love song. Just embrace each other, it's beautiful. Maybe you've not done that in years. Humble yourself before your spouse and embrace them and sing it and dance together. Here's the other thing I want you to do. Don't make it private. I want to know what your love song is. So will you post on social media your love song? You can find it on YouTube and post it. And this is our marriage love song or whatever. Hashtag FAFW, love and marriage. Do that. I'd love to listen to all the songs. I get so sappy. It's so awesome. I love it. Third one's a little deeper. If you haven't talked about the issues, then do it. Set up a time this week. Don't surprise your spouse. Set up a time. Say, hey, can we talk tonight? Can we talk tomorrow night? Whatever it may be. Say, Pastor Rob's preaching the messages this month, and it's got me thinking, and just want to make sure we're on the same page, or maybe you both know the issues. And you're like, hey, I just need to get clarity again. We just need to rehash this out. I'm just not feeling it, or whatever it may be. Set the time, have the conversation. If you need someone else there, phone a friend, grab a pastor, call a counselor, do what it's going to take so that you can have the marriage that you want. Here's the last thing I would encourage. Get in a group. I say it every week. You weren't meant to live life alone. Married couples, you need other married couples. If you are engaged, you really could be going to the married life class at 9 o'clock. There are dozens and dozens of couples in there who have been through it. And I have a testimony here, just a praise for that class, Married Life. I want to read it to you. It says, my husband and I have a great marriage. Before we married, we learned a lot from our premarital counselor, and we were both pretty healthy. I'm like, they went to premarital counseling. That's fantastic. They started right. We like going to Married Life to keep us focused on a Christ-centered marriage and family. Talking points and themes we talk about help us talk about the smaller but potentially big things that we may never deal with, but don't realize that they may affect our relationship. Married Life, it gives us permission to talk about subjects we may not usually venture to speak about. Class also helps us keep Christ in the middle of our marriage. My husband and I are also quiet and tend to have a small circle of friends. Being connected to this class encourages us to have friendships with other married couples and to talk to them in a Christ-focused environment. You need to talk about married things in a Christ-focused environment. You need that. So those of you who lead Married Life, if next week class you need a bigger room, just let us know and we'll see what we have to do. But God wants you to see your relationship, your marriage, vibrant, full. If it's struggling, He wants to see it restored.